grateful to Professor Shah to having me come and speak with you, especially at this time. We just watched the announcement together to see what's going on for all of you. And I'm curious, you're all, this is a pretty high-level psych course, right? So you're moving into some counseling. Anyone want to be a counselor here? What is it you're thinking about doing? Psychologist? Any psychologists? Tell me what you're interested in doing. I'm interested in knowing. What do you want to do when you leave here as kids?
I'm just ministry focused.
Ministry focused. Counselor.
High school counselor.
High school counselor.
Working with teens in outreach ministry.
Beautiful.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice.
Same.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice. Social work.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice. Beautiful. Then we're in the right spot. I've coached all of those. So basically I'm what I call a high performance coach. I'm not exactly a life coach, though some people put me in that category. I help people with one specific thing, and that's reduce stress for high level performance. Whether that performance is being on the stage, whether that performance is being in a car and taking care of people. So I've worked with people, a lot of people in uniform, a lot of people in healthcare, social workers, educators, and tons of students aged 10 to 30. So that's kind of a sweet spot other than my CEO type clients. I created something in 2010 called the pressure-free method. So these are 2 ways that you can get to me easily, and there's contact information on there, including my phone number. And I'm going to make sure that Professor Scott has a way for you all to connect to me so that you don't need to take notes. I'm going to give you videos and book chapters that cover everything I'm going to share with you. So you don't even need to have that. You'll have it all so you can reread it if you like. So basically with this pressure-free method, how did this happen? How did this get started? I'm a musician. When I was at the University of Michigan, I was a violinist, a conductor, and I got an MBA as well, so I have a business degree. And how many of you have either been in an orchestra, band, chorus, anything like that? Anybody play sports? So some athletes too. So I was both a musician and an athlete at Michigan. And when you're doing either of those activities, you're on a stage. You're performing. People expect you to perform a certain way. So I've been on stage since I was really little. I love stages. I love performing. But in my master's degree program, I was actually doing conducting. And one of my friends asked me to perform on his senior recital. So I'm like, totally cool, I'd love to do it. So we're playing Mozart. Are you familiar with Mozart? Mozart has to be perfect, right? It's like really exact music. Every note has to be perfect. So I was like, yeah, we're going to do the Mozart clarinet quintet. Fine. Rehearsals go great. Everything's going great. I'm feeling great. The recital hall is small. There won't be very many people in there. It's just like, his senior recital, no big deal. And the reason he chose me to be with him is because a month before, he had won concerto competitions at Michigan, which is a really big deal. He's one of the best clarinetists in the whole world. And I was assigned to be his conductor for his performance in the Hill Auditorium, which, if you've ever been to U of M, is a great big auditorium. So we performed, it went super well, and that was when he asked me to do this. So we go out on stage. I'm expecting a handful of people, maybe twice as many as you here. And the entire recital hall was packed, standing room only, people all in the back and down the sides. This kid must have been the most popular musician at U of M. I'm like, what are all these people doing here? But then I looked out into the crowd, and the whole string faculty, so the violin professors, viola, cello, bass, they're all there to watch our quintet. Well, I did not expect that. And I went into something called a full-blown panic attack. Has anybody ever had a panic attack? Back then, we didn't even have the words for this. I didn't know what was happening to me. My face turned bright red. My palms were so sweaty I could not play. My body was shaking so much, and I have to tune. I'm the first violinist. I have to tune everybody. I went to put my bow on the A string. I was like, shh. I couldn't even draw my bow. I'm like, oh my God. I was a complete panic attack on stage in front of this standing room crowd. So I played. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't hear. My heartbeat was in my head so much I couldn't even hear. I couldn't see well. But I had to get through this thing and lead this thing. And I did it. But I came off the stage and I never have had this happen. I just burst into tears. I'm like, I just ruined, and it wasn't about me, it was like, I just looked at Dan and said, I just ruined your recital. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, I don't know what happened to me. I've never had this happen to me before. And he goes, you played just fine. I'm like, no, I didn't. It was horrible. So back then we had like reel-to-reel, the big reel-to-reel tapes. So he backs it up and he starts playing. He goes, see, you sound fine. But that's not what was in my head. It was horrific, right? So I got home to my dorm that night, or to my apartment, and I was like, that can never happen to me again. I was selected out of 200 people to be one of the first woman, actually, ever to conduct Michigan's orchestra. I was the first woman in that program. I have to be spot on in everything I do. And now I had this crash and burn thing happen to me. And it totally shattered my confidence. It totally messed with me. So I'm like, this can never happen to me again. How am I going to solve this? So this is pre-internet. I went to the University of Michigan's med library, the medical library. Like, I'm going to read everything I can about how to never have whatever happened to me happen again. And I just dug into research. And I started creating these simple little things to keep me always calm and confident. No matter where I went, no matter what was going down, no matter who was in the audience, I was not going to ever have that happen again. And I taught that to my violin and viola students for 4 decades now. And so flash forward, 2010, I started creating a business. It had to do with finance, because I'm pretty good at money. And as I'm building that, I put a mentor in my life. Do any of you have mentors? Or people that mentors are wonderful. You know, I put a mentor in my life. He's one of the top economic developers in the country. And I asked him to take a look at my business. So he looks at it and he goes, well, this is pretty cool, but I read your bio online. I don't think you should be doing this. So just 2 nights later, we live in an old house in Battle Creek, big dining room table. I have all boys. We're all sitting around talking. And my eldest son goes, you know what, Mother, you should coach our baseball team in your mental toughness tips. We win states. And I was like, you want me in the dugout? Really? And he goes, I seriously want you in the dugout. Now, that team had a son of an MLB umpire and had 4 of the best kids in the whole city on that team. So it was a really high-powered team. And I listened to him, I thought he was just kidding me. But my middle son, who was playing as well on the team, they were both starters, he goes, we want you, Mom. We want you to do this. So I thought, okay. I started writing, crafted a little pamphlet with some funny baseball graphics. This was 2010. What happened in 2008, 9, 10 in this country? Anyone know? Big recession. So the head coach of this baseball team was a financial planner. You think his life was going so well in 2010? A lot of financial planners actually committed suicide in 2010. It was a really tough time. So I brought this idea to him, which was kind of a crazy idea that I would actually work with the baseball team, right, as a mom. And he looked at me and goes, I want you to work with this team. Not only that, I'm going to hire you to be my private coach, and I'm going to start next week. So I had a paying client and a whole baseball team. I've taught for years at the Kellogg Community College. I taught violin and viola. And a couple weeks later, or a week later, I was just shooting the breeze with my department chair. I said, hey, I have to tell you what I'm working on these days. It's this performance technique thing. And she was so excited, she literally pulled out her checkbook and wrote a check for me. So I had 2 paying clients and a whole baseball team, whereas 2 weeks before, I was working on something completely different. Now I want to go back to that moment when my mentor said, I don't think you should be doing this. Here's what he said to me, because I'm sure my face kind of went like, I've been working for months on this project, right? He goes, just stay open. So I stayed open to this idea from my kids, right? And then I got the courage to go talk, and one of the coaches, you know, he's got his arms like this and the big chew in his mouth, and he's spitting the whole time. And he loved it. I ended up working with all those boys, and then they started hiring me to be their private coach. So that's how this whole thing of Pressure Free got started. So I call this the Pressure Free method, and I'm going to teach it to you today. And I've got you in this formation because we're going to do some things. You're not just going to sit the whole time. The Pressure Free method, what I mean by pressure free is no matter what situations or people or things come at you in your day that cause any sort of pressure or challenge, you can stay free of going into fight or flight. You're all familiar with fight or flight? Certainly learned this, right? So I've known about fight or flight my whole life, but I thought it was only triggered by anxiety and anger. There's a couple other little emotions that cause it, and that's the first thing I want to go into today, or what I call the A's. So anytime you feel angry, anxious, and here are the other two, annoyed or ashamed. So other than that one really bad moment when I was performing, I've been performing my whole life, I don't get very anxious, and I don't get very angry. If you ask my kids, they would tell you that too. However, I get majorly annoyed. I lived in a house with hockey playing, baseball playing, runner boys. There's going to be dirty socks somewhere. And so I would get very annoyed at that. And we were a travel hockey and travel baseball family, and 3 boys, so every weekend we were split with somebody going with another family. So our calendar on our wall was insane. So if anything was tripped up, like parent can't take this person, whatever, I would get annoyed. So annoyance was my big A. So angry, anxious, annoyed, or ashamed. Those are the emotions that when you start to feel them, can cause you to trigger fight or flight. So you might not be very anxious about something, but something which might be just kind of ticking you off a little bit. Or like this situation, you just had the announcement of what's going to happen here. That can be a little annoying. Well, now I'm not going to go to class. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change up my stuff. So you need to be on the lookout for anything that makes you feel these A's. Does that make sense? What I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to break into twos and just turn your chair actually to each other and just share a couple of things that you think might fall under here. Like what makes you feel angry, anxious, annoyed, or ashamed. And see if you can identify about 3 of them each. So we're not going to talk long, but just enough so that you got something out. So go ahead and just pair up for a moment. And go ahead and turn your chair so you're actually looking at the person. You want to do with me or you want to do with the professor? Go ahead. Go with him.
I just.
Angry, anxious, annoyed, ashamed. Oh, just share something that makes you feel any of those 4 emotions. Just 3 things each. Just 3 things each.
3 things for each other.
For each person.
Oh, okay, that's. Okay. Do you have one?
I feel like I have angry, anxious, and annoyed are different together. Is that unexpected situations.
And once you've shared 3, just turn your chairs back and that'll tell me that we're ready to go on.
It's hard to put your nose in my finger.
Okay, if you guys can wrap up, you turn around. You want to come back over? Did you get a chance to share? I know, you could go on. I was at a coaching workshop one night, and I had a 17-year-old girl in the workshop, and people could go, it was like at a mansion, and people could walk on the terrace or out on the grounds to write. And she took an 8.5 by 11 and covered it both sides, little tiny spidery print. And she came back in, she comes from a really large family, and she goes, "It's just a wonder I haven't killed them all." She's like, "So insane. My home life is insane." You know, so many triggers. So some of them are kind of funny, some are very serious. And did I hear you say, what's your name?
Cassie.
I heard Cassie say, like, these three kind of are linked.
Mm-hmm.
Especially these two here. Like, you can get a little annoyed, and then finally you blow your stack, right? It goes into full-blown angry. So, and of course it's all the other emotions that are like these, any nervousness, any worry, anything like that. Speaking to a moment to the people going to criminal justice, I was just, in fact, on my Facebook feed a week ago, Saturday. I was out skating on a pond, completely alone with my husband, and I hear my name. And I turn around, and I have only coached 4 individuals in Grand Rapids. I just moved here, and one of them, this boy, when he was 15, he took my course. He was a wrestler here in Grand Rapids. And he was out walking his dog. And he called out our names, right? And I couldn't believe it. So he took my course. He's now an EMT. And I pulled him on camera, because I was actually on camera at the moment. I pulled him on camera and I said, "Can you tell everybody what Pressure Free has done for you in your profession?" So firefighters and EMT, right now he's working as an EMT. He said amazing things. He said, when he sees the other guys, they actually go into fight or flight. Even though they've been very trained to not, they do. And he stays calm. And that saves lives. So it's really kind of interesting how these things, what triggers us. Slight annoyances. I was working with a firefighter, he said his pager just has to go off. And it's like an instant flood of hormones. So when we talk about stress, the thing that I'm really interested about are stress hormones. Can any of you name some stress hormones?
Of course they can.
Of course they can. Cortisol, okay. What else? Stress hormones.
Adrenaline.
Thank you. These two get talked about a lot, don't they? You hear about people using CBD oil and marijuana to lower this, right? So I'm going to show you today that you don't want to do that. You actually don't want to lower this if you've triggered this. Is everybody familiar with adrenaline? Has everyone had an adrenaline rush? So everybody knows what that feels like, the adrenaline rush. So this is actually a cocktail. They're called catecholamines. And again, I'll send all this to you so you have it. So I call it a cocktail because once you trigger fight or flight or freeze, for any reason, you just send a whole bunch of chemicals into your bloodstream straight out of your adrenals, right? So those catecholamine hormones, you're now under the influence. What does it change? Just let's just hear. You don't have to pair up. I want to hear from you. Like, what do you feel when this happens to you? When this flood of hormones goes out. It's just this right here. It goes out. What do you feel? Yes.
I had a really bad accident a couple of years ago. I got like a really serious concussion, and I'm an athlete, but I wasn't playing sports at the time. Okay. And the injury was to my head. I have a scar on my forehead. It's like this one. You can see like half of it. And I passed out. I had like 20-some stitches. Was ambulanced to the hospital. And the doctor who like was sewing me up could see my skull. Like it was bad. And I didn't even feel it. Like there was no pain. I mean, I knew that my head, was like open and blood was coming out. But
right.
I couldn't feel anything. And I was like, I woke up like screaming for help. And I was able to walk on my own somehow. Like I knew my surroundings, but like I couldn't even feel anything. So that was 100% adrenaline. Yeah.
Wow. You went into that adrenaline phase you couldn't feel. Like the mother who could pick up the pickup truck, even though.
Like I couldn't feel any pain. Like I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't feel anything.
Wow. And that's a really massive.
Yeah, that was the biggest one I've ever had.
Hopefully you'll never have one like that
That's
again.
what I'm hoping.
Wow.
Yeah.
Other people, what do you feel in the adrenaline phase? What do you feel? Go ahead. Do you have something?
The biggest adrenaline rushes I have, they're hazy to think back on, and mostly it's just like an instant reaction rather than an actual thought behind it.
I love that word, hazy. That's a good word. Okay. Yeah.
With
so
the big ones usually. Yeah.
with the big ones, you've kind of like forgotten. Like I couldn't remember how I played on stage, right? What about you? What do you feel? Yes. What's your name?
I'm Luke.
Hi, Luke.
Adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Well, I have two of them.
Okay.
I played on a broken foot and all my toes in a football game once, and I played the entire game. I broke in the first play of the game, and my father made me play on it. And that's the game. But I didn't feel it until they had to like cut my cleat off my foot because my foot was swollen. Yeah, and then I actually this past fall I was pulling a trailer with my truck, and the trailer fell off with all the stuff in it. I was just so geared up that I put it all back on the hitch and drove away.
Oh,
All myself.
all by yourself. So you
Yeah.
had a lot of strength
Yep.
in that moment.
Yep.
Okay. How about you? How have you felt when you're in the adrenaline phase?
Just a general one is just the need to move and act and
Need to move and act.
energy.
Yep. Anybody else? Does anybody's stomach get weird? Who? Let me see. Hands for stomach. How about you feel your heartbeat going? Check that. Okay. Anybody have it up here like instant headache, or your head feels really weird, or it's like you've lost. You're not thinking. You're not thinking very clearly. And does anybody here suffer from test anxiety? Like you know your test grade should be higher because you know more than what's coming out on the page. Okay. So when this flood of hormones goes out, exactly like you said, all we're supposed to do is protect ourselves from what? A physical attack, from something horrific happening to us physically, right? Today we treat all sorts of little tiny things as if they were physical attacks. They're not really. Like being late to class. How many of you get a little rush because you're trying to hurry to get to class?
Sometimes.
Just that little bit of rush is going to release these catecholamines. And you're now going to be under the influence. So I want to share a few things that happen because they're pretty profound. When you go into this cocktail, the first thing that happens is your cognitive function, your cortex here shuts down, and your hippocampus. So you're thinking and remembering, your decision making, your willpower, that all shuts down a little bit. That's why when you go to class, you might not be doing so well. So I'm going to fast forward you. You're now all parents, and you've been working with your little one on their math facts. It's the night before the test, and they know them perfectly. Now it's morning, and they wake up, and you go, "Hurry up, Bobby, we're going to be late." What do you think happens to Bobby when you say that? He's going to go into an adrenaline rush. And now you're going to drive way too fast to get to school because you're already late for work. And little Bobby's going to get out of his car and he's going to take his test, and what's going to happen? When I first started this back in 2010, I had a hockey player come to work with me when he was 12. And he came to me to better his hockey. I'm known as a performance coach. Wants to really kick butt in hockey. So we're working, he comes to the second session, he goes, "This helps with school, doesn't it?" Like, yeah. And he goes, "Tell me," I go, "Tell me why you know that." He goes, "He has never in his life gotten an A, all C's and D's. And he got an A on a history test. He's 12 years old, gets his first A ever. He graduated a few years later, straight A's honor student, with a full ride baseball scholarship on that. Now, what if that kid still had C's and D's? Because some of you are going to counseling. What if that boy still had C's and D's that entire ride? What would he be doing now, do you think? Would he have gone to college?
Probably not all of that.
That's all that. Maybe community college to see if he could even get in, right? Because he probably would have really bombed any sort of testing. He might not have even finished school. I've talked to a lot of boys who just didn't even finish school with grades like that. Why bother? I'm no good at it, right? So most of it is just anxiety about the test. And you can help people with that, that's going to be so huge. So this fluid hormones shuts down the brain a lot, but also that stomach thing. A lot of you raised your hand about the stomach thing. When we go into fight or flight, the saliva ducts shut off and the whole digestive system slows down. Do you know when you get called on in class and suddenly your mouth is dry? It's because those saliva ducts have shut down. So when you can keep your saliva going, now you're going to digest your food here, and you're going to be able to digest it here. So that's really huge for a lot of people. I had a tennis player I was working with, and it was like every time before a match, instant diarrhea. Instant. Like scary. I had another person, this was a runner I was working with, he had the opposite, terrible constipation. So this whole system gets really messed up when we go into pregnancy. Reproductive system gets messed up. Your skin gets weird. So I had my first big violin competition when I was 13. I'm from New England, and it was a really big deal. And this hand broke out in eczema. Does anybody have eczema or know what eczema is?
I was going to say, no.
So eczema is a skin disorder, where the knuckles especially, but some people get it in patches like under their arm or on their, they get them in weird places. Mine were all on my hands, and here I am a violinist, right? All on my hands, very visible. This knuckle here was cracked and bleeding for 35 years. Age 13 to 47. So I'm teaching people, right, with Band-Aids. I'm performing on stage with little Band-Aids so people don't see that I have like a bleeding knuckle constantly. So it was quite awful. And in 8 weeks of using this method on myself, it completely healed. I would never even show you my hands. I would never wear a ring because I would not want attention. And here I was an executive having to shake hands all the time. And every time I did it, my hands got sweaty because I was so nervous that they're going to feel these nasty things all over my hand. So eczema, psoriasis, those are skin disorders. And again, it's because when this goes out, you're not digesting your food so the nutrients can't get out to your cells. So there's a whole bunch of other things that happen, but the shakiness, we haven't talked about that. But if any of you felt kind of like jiggling, I was just this amazing conference in Las Vegas where, let's see, Kevin Hart, John Travolta, Usher, and a whole bunch of other people were speaking from the stage in the middle with 12,000 people around them about business. Okay, so Usher is talking about business. John Travolta is talking about his pilot's license and his businesses. He owns 3 planes. So it's kind of interesting. What was really wild to me is that all 3 of those gentlemen, they're sitting there and their legs are jiggling. They're not used to being on stage and talking about business. In fact, I don't think they ever do. So this was like a new dynamic for them. So any kind of shakiness is caused by this. Also, some of you were athletes. We're perfect in practice, and then we get to the game, and we're just off a little bit. Anybody experience that? We get just off a little bit. So that's because when you get these catecholamines into your reflexes is hyper. So you go to throw the ball, and you're overthrowing. You go to pass, and you're overpassing. So you go to shoot, and it's not quite there. And that's because your reflexes are hyper, and you're like doing more than you really need to. So everybody knows about this phase pretty much, and you guys jumped on cortisol right away. Here's what most people don't know, though. It's not just cortisol. The second flood of hormones, and it doesn't go out with this either. That's another big thing that's misinformation. Glucocorticoids are a whole second flood of hormones. And they go out when your brain and body say, oh, I'm cool now. I'm not under attack anymore. So they're going to go out to fix all the cells that you messed up. Your major muscle cells and your brain cells have all been messed up by this adrenaline. So now this is going to go out and fix them. So if you have people trying to reduce cortisol, but you need cortisol to fix your brain cells, what do you think is going to happen in 20 years? You're going to have some people with some real cognitive difficulty. We're going to need a lot more people in this class to serve those people. So glucocorticoids are great because you did this to your body. However, they have a ton of side effects. Does anybody know the side effects of glucocorticoids? What is glucose first? Sugar. You just threw a whole bunch of sugar into your bloodstream. What diseases come up to mind? Diabetes, hypoglycemia, sugar issues in the blood, right? That's an issue. So, glucose is doing that. What about cortisol? What have you learned about cortisol? Anything? Yeah? Weight gain. Weight gain. Definitely. Yeah, what's interesting about cortisol, the adrenaline pulls all your fat and glucose to the center of your body, and then the cortisol expands the cells. So that's what's going down there. Immune system. Isn't that on everybody's mind these days, right? when you trigger glucocorticoids, when that flood goes out, your immune system drops up to 40%. So we've got a lot going on in our universe right now where people are dropping their immune system up to 40%. Is that a good idea? It's pretty crazy. So this cortisol will drop your immune system and also your ability to heal. Like you mentioned, this big scar. So now the healing process happens. And isn't it, we can talk about God here, and we can talk about the miraculous of the human body. I mean, look at how you have this huge, did you know he had that huge cut? Look at it.
It's not very noticeable.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even notice it.
Right. So it is healed.
Yeah, really well too.
And what's so cool is, I mean, because when you did that, you cut nerve cells, you cut all kinds of cells. A nerve cell doesn't attach to a skin cell. These little fibers go out to find their match to start that healing. I think that is so incredible. But this will slow it down. So I worked with an athlete, he was a pitcher lefty, and he had shoulder surgery. And the coach said, you're going to be, or the trainer said, you will be off for 12 months from the mound. No pitching for 12 months. That's a long time when you're a freshman in college to not be pitching from the mound. So I worked him the day after his surgery, and he used my method. I'm going to teach you today. And 6 weeks in, he texted me. He said, my coach and my trainer and the PT said they've never seen anybody start healing so fast. He was pitching for the mound at 6 months. Another boy who played hockey for Aquinas College here in Grand Rapids, he was in a bad car accident, and he messed up his elbow and his ankle. And the trainer said, you will be off the ice for 8 weeks. And so I was like, they called me, and I coached him while he was laying on his dorm bed. He made the season over at 2.5 weeks. So you can heal so much faster when you're not spilling all of this into your bloodstream. So how do we stop it? Any ideas? Stay calm.
Just
Don't go into fight or flight. Beautiful. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Like, don't go into fight or flight. So, easier said than done. That's right. So I've created a very simple 3-step method. First, we're actually called targets. So I want you to pair up with someone different this time. So you can get up and move chairs and find someone you haven't talked to. And then I'll tell you what to do. So find yourself a new partner. Mix it up, mix it up. Find yourself. There you go. I love it. Let's face each other. Let's face each other. Keep your 3, however many inches or whatever apart from each other. I want you to share with the other person, and one person start, and then I'll say switch, and you can switch if you haven't. I want you to share, what are you aiming for in your life? Like, what are some goals? Goals, dreams, visions? Or, what is it you want to prevent? So any sort of prevention. Maybe, for example, there's diabetes. In my family, there's diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. I don't want any of those. I'd like to stay away from all of that. So that's something I want to prevent. And if I stay away from these, I can do so. So what are some goals, dreams, or visions that you have for yourself? It can be career, money, relationship, any of that. And then what are some things you want to prevent? So go ahead. Just see if you can name a few things, each one of you together.
Okay, so goals. I'm ready to like drums on too, but maybe on a bigger scale instead of just like in church. Goals. I want a godly life because it's hard to come by. Sometimes, so it's a goal. Vision. I don't really have a vision, but what I want to do is have a lot of outreach ministry and stuff like that. So something to do with that in the church. And then my ears ring for my concussions, so if there's a way for me to not get the worse. And then I also have a family, so I want to stay with you. My dad's dad died at the age of 65. And so people on my mom's side did too. Yeah.
So my goals are to use them none of my family ever even went to third grade. Well, my brother he hasn't even graduated from high school.
So if you haven't switched yet, go ahead and switch partners.
So I'm the first one whoever graduates from high school, go to college, stay in college, and get good grades.
Yeah, that's good.
One of my dreams is
Yeah, if you haven't, no, with each other.
Oh,
Like, if you haven't
like
shared
switch
yet,
people.
no. If you shared, then you're good.
and
And then you can just turn your chairs when you're
have a strong faith. And
Well, actually, no, stay like that for a moment.
you know, like,
Yeah.
the divisions that I have is I see myself looking for my body. And one of the things I want to prevent is having jealous.
Yeah, true. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good one.
And
Yeah.
I guess you could say vision. And I think the next thing is I need to
Yeah.
Okay, everybody freeze. Like, don't move your bodies. Like, just stay the way you are. You can go back to the position you were. Yeah, you're good. Just stay exactly the way you were. Now I'm just gonna, before I have you do this little thing, I'm gonna share something about your bodies to help you with your bodies. So it's kind of crazy, but it will really help in so many ways. So most of us suffer from pretty bad posture. I want to go back to when you were a baby. So when you were a baby, you were kind of on your toes, right? You had your arms out for balance. There were babies running all around over there. Did you see that? And they're like this. They don't look down, by the way. Do you notice that's why they trip on things? They're like, running around, right? But look at their spines. Like, they're pretty erect, right? Balancing. And then what happens? When they start getting cool, right? And I've seen guys drive like this. It's so cool. Really C curve. And now we're on our phones, we're on our laptops, and suddenly all you need to do is put a cane in my hand, and I have a big hump back here. Right? So I'm going to share something to you. I want you to remember it for the rest of your life. Just change how you stand. Sit. He can watch you. In class, in your cars, when you eat, whatever. So your whole body starts to get better. Okay? The first step is don't pinch your shoulders back like that. I study anthropologists who study no back pain around the world. I want you to push your arms in the air and then come down with your thumbs on the outside. And notice how that makes you go kind of wide. Notice how that opens up? You're not pinching back, but you're just going wide. So people around the world, and some of you go on mission trips, it'd be cool for you to watch us and see. They don't walk with their thumbs against their thighs, they walk with their thumbs out like this. It's because a lot of times they have buckets in their hands. And they have things on their heads. And their thoracic curve, the one in here, is very straight. So watch if I put my arms just normal. And now I'm going to turn my arms out. See how the thoracic got straighter? They have a great neck curve because they don't have phones. A really nice thoracic curve. And a really great lumbar support curve. Alright? So that, just a simple thing like that, I teach my athletes, I teach a lot of people just to do that. It's going to open up the chest and you can breathe better. We'll be moving into breathing in a moment. The next thing is really funny. First of all, really look at each other. Take like a picture in your mind of how each of you looks. Sitting the way you sit. Okay? Okay, now I want you to stand up a little bit. Grab your butt. You can grab your own butt. Grab your butt and pull it up so it's against your back. And sit down on your hamstrings or your thigh bones. So I'll demonstrate. I'll demonstrate with this chair. So pull up your glutes and sit down on your hamstrings. Okay, so your butt is, these chairs are not well designed. You'll see. So try it. Okay, now look at each other and see how each other looks. Yeah, you have to, like, these I think you have to go way back in. Ideally you have like a really flat chair, you can really feel it. So we're supposed to sit on our hamstrings, not our butts. The more you sit on your butt, the more saggy it gets. People my age, most people my age, have really saggy butts. I work with a body coach who taught me all this. She says, you're not going to have a saggy butt anymore. We're going to get rid of that. Because your butt is supposed to protect your lower back. How many people have lower back pain? Anybody here? Like, fast forward, and it's really bad. When I work with older groups, they're like, oh yeah, we all have back pain. So start sitting on your hamstrings where you can instantly now stand up without squilling in your chair. You can get up and down. Very easily. Try it. Just get up, and grab your butt again, and sit down on your hamstrings. You all look amazing now. Now you're all going to get hired. If you go into an interview, and I know it feels weird right now, yeah, grab your butt. What are you doing?
I'm going to do that in the interview.
After a while, you won't have to grab your butt anymore, by the way. You'll just get right into your car and you'll already be in this frame. Okay. But does it make sense? So now you'll probably stay awake in your afternoon class. I fell asleep once at the Music School of Michigan in a really high-level class. There were only 12 in the class. So was it obvious that I fell asleep? So the professor called on me. And he said, Miss Starrett. That's my maiden name. Miss Starrett, what is happening in this phrase? It was counterpoint, right? So I go, I look at my book, and I think, well, with the F sharp, I think we're moving into the key of G now. And he goes, you're on the wrong page. In front of the whole class. It was so embarrassing. So, you don't want to fall asleep in class, just sit on your hamstrings more, that will help. The other thing is head to the horizon. We get a lot going on all the time, so people are really messing up their cervical curves and their curves. Also, when you look out to your horizon and you start thinking about your goals, dreams, and visions, you're up here. When you start to feel like you're going to go into fight or flight, you're going to coil up to protect yourself. But if you can get your head up and over the situation, you can now solve it. Does that make sense? My father-in-law was an engineer, and he said, in order to solve something, you need to be a technology above it. I think physically, if we get up and above, we can solve better. If we go here, we can solve better. So keep your head up, eyes to the horizon. I want you now in your new beautiful frames to turn to the person again. I want each of you to say, like, what is really important to you? Like, it's really important to me that I do this, or I have this happen in my life. One of the two of the most important things. And the other person, I want you to confirm and say, I really believe you can do that. Okay. Now that you're in your stronger frames, go ahead, turn back to your partners. State what you really want to have happen in your life. And the other person affirm it.
My mom at supper tonight, she'll be like, what are you? Alright, you go first.
So one of the things I really want to happen in my life is to become a U.S. citizen within the next 4 years.
You're from where?
I'm from El Salvador.
Okay.
El Salvador.
Okay.
And on next month I will be able to apply for the
test.
application, just for the test. And then I'm gonna have to study for the test, which is 100 questions, and I already know pretty much what the answer is.
That's good.
And I don't need to. I just want to. I can go back home anytime I want, but I don't want to have any problems with immigration, so I'm just waiting to become a U.S. citizen and just not it.
That's your first one?
That's it. The next one. Seeing my family after 7 years.
And when you're done, you can go ahead and turn your chair.
Pretty much my whole family.
Are they all back in El Salvador?
Except for my brother.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I believe I can do that. That's cool. So next month you take the test?
Next month I will apply for the.
Apply for it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Cool.
Did you get to finish?
He finished.
Okay. Anybody want to share what one of their big goals is? Are you guys good? You want to come on back? She likes it over there.
I do. I really like it over there.
Anybody want to share what were their big, like, this is something I really want to do for the group?
I can.
Yes.
So I've been engaged for a while, and I'm very ready to get married.
Wow. Well, let's give him a round of applause. That's
We're trying to
beautiful.
wait until we have college degrees and can support ourselves, and it's a long way.
And you told him you believe you
Yeah.
can do it. So beautiful. Anybody else want to share, like, what they want to have happen in their life?
Mine's kind of on the other side. I really want a family. I want to be a dad. I know it's like cliche, but
No, it's not cliche.
I really want a family. Really bad.
It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yes. No, you go.
Well, I was just saying, telling Shaw that I really want to teach my son how to respect his elders, because I think that's a value that's been forgotten over the years. And I want to start this men's home lesson in the shelter right
Wow. That's pretty intense.
now.
In your home would be
If
amazing.
I did that in my home, my husband would probably be like, no.
Yeah, I've had things happen. Our second dog we got from a homeless man. He was going in the shelter and he couldn't bring the dog in the shelter. So I took it for him and I kept her name, saying to him. And he blessed me. It was really an amazing moment. And then once we had an ice storm and a huge limb crashed down, and when I looked out, there was a man out there. Then I thought maybe it had hit him. And my husband was out to see if this guy was okay. He had like a big down parka and really long hair, and he looked maybe homeless or but I looked and I'm like, my husband's gonna invite him in for lunch. And sure enough, they started walking across the lawn, and he turned out to be a PhD candidate at Michigan in sociology and Slavic languages. So who am I to judge, right? We don't know who needs our help, and we don't know who people are, but we judge books by their covers, for sure. So, goals, dreams, visions. Making this stuff happen. The reason I had you say I believe in you, we need people to believe in us. I think we've lost that, and coming to your point too, not only do we need children to respect, we need to respect children. It's a two-way street, and that's how we raised our children, with full respect on both sides, and it's a beautiful thing. And when that starts to happen, the world is a better place. So your goals, dreams, and visions, and what you wish to prevent. Did anybody have anything they wanted to prevent? I'm curious. Yes?
Diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cancer.
All those big,
Those are
all those stress hormone-induced diseases, by the way.
Those are all part of my family history.
So what's fascinating about that, you may have does anybody else have like histories in their family of people with those things? There's hardly anyone who doesn't, right? So here's what's really interesting. If you have a predisposition genetically to a disease, it does not have to reflect in your body. You actually have many, many libraries of your DNA, and those will only express if you've been in negative thought so much that you've worn down your telomeres. There are other libraries in your DNA that are health-giving. So we haven't even begun to tap them. They say that a normal or average person, or of course not average, but the average person uses only about 5% of their DNA. So there's huge amounts of ability within our bodies to be super amazingly healthy. So you can really change a lot of that. And all of those diseases are directly caused by the release of these hormones. If we can stop that, like you said, if we can stop it, stop fight or flight, then those hormones are not going to go out. So that's what my method does for you. Targets are the first step, because if you don't have an aim, if you don't have a real mission, then people usually don't use my method. They're just kind of drifting along. And whatever happens, happens. And these things come at them. So that's why I have you develop this first, and that's like your why. This is why you want to be a great dad. This is why you want to do this. This is why you want to be in criminal justice. So, next step is triggers. This gets back to these 4 here. What makes you feel any of these? Those are your triggers. Those are the things that cause you to release the stress hormone releases. First flood, adrenaline. A while later, glucocorticoids. Oh, I missed something about, anybody have trouble sleeping? Sometimes? Okay, so if you have trouble sleeping, when you trigger fight or flight, the adrenaline phase, then a few hours go by and then the glucocorticoids come out. Cortisol is your wake-up drug. So it will wake you up. Like maybe you'll get to sleep, but 2 or 3 a.m. you're wide awake. So it means that that was just when that flood of hormones went out. And it's your wake-up drug, so it's going to wake you up. So it's all about timing and it's all about amounts. So everybody's a little bit different. But I've helped people with chronic sleep issues finally get real night's sleep. I had one client, she's in her 40s. For the first time in her whole adult life, she's actually had a real night's sleep. So triggers. We went through that exercise of what causes you to feel angry, anxious, annoyed, ashamed. Did anybody have any humorous ones? I like to hear the funny ones. Like, I had a baseball player say how long his sister took her shower because they shared a bathroom. So every morning he was pretty ticked off and annoyed because she took so long getting herself ready in the bathroom and he had to wait. So they can be funny. Does anybody want to share some triggers that you have or that you see?
Mine are all serious.
Oh, you're serious?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Share a serious one.
Something that I'm dealing with right now is my past, like we're talking like 6 to 8 years ago, wasn't the greatest. I made a lot of dumb mistakes, did a lot of things that I can't change. And I've like completely changed by the grace of God, like in those things, my desires and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like currently right now in my life, I have people that are holding me hostage to the things that I did back then, and they're not giving me a chance to be who I am like now. And like I'm losing friends and stuff like that. So not people from here, just from other places.
Your other
in life.
world, yeah.
It really makes me upset because like I know that I've changed, but they're like 8 years ago you did this. I'm like 8 years ago I did that. I'm doing this now. So that for me is something that makes me very angry. And
It gets into that. We all have crap, by the way, and we all have traumas. You'll hear a lot about traumas and ACEs today, and all the things about childhood traumas. I was coaching a boy who's probably been through some of the most trauma I've ever met in my life. He was at the Michigan Youth Challenge Academy. Have anybody heard of that? It's probably you should probably know about this with the field you're going into. So in Michigan and in 30 other states around the nation, there are these challenge academies for youth who are either going to be in prison or they can't go back into school because of what they've done. It's kind of like a last-ditch effort, and it's a military academy combined with an academic academy. So I had coached their therapist because we talk about secondhand stress, which is something we'll get into in a moment. This is the field you're going into. So I coached her, and she goes, "We have a kid that no one can help. The psychologists here are throwing up their hands; they can't help him. So I want you to see if you could meet with him. Now he's violent. So I'm going to put myself in a room with a violent 17-year-old. So I have never done anything like that. And she goes, we'll have all the safeguards in place for you. And I just want you to come in and see if you can meet with this. So we met in our first session. And this kid had been detoxing for 2 weeks, and he probably weighed about, 120 pounds. Like he had nothing on him. And so we meet, and he's in his uniform and everything, military uniform. And we instantly hit it off. And we instantly start working together. So I worked with him for 5 months, every week. And at the end, he actually won the Physical Fitness Award. And there were some huge dudes in there, but he just applied himself, and he changed his whole life. But in one of our sessions, here's what he said to me. We were talking about childhood traumas and things, and he goes, even the rich girl who asked for the pony for Christmas and didn't get it experiences trauma. And I thought that was really interesting for him. This is a boy who had cut marks so deep they'd gone through the bone on his legs. I mean, this was serious. So I'm really glad you brought something up that brought to this one. Because we all have crap we did when we were little that for which we can feel shame still, right? Does everybody have like something? Maybe you were mean to somebody or bullied somebody. I certainly bullied someone when I was young, and I fully admit it because bullying behavior meant that I went here, and I wasn't in control. So these are the A's and these are the B's. Use this word. So when we go into fight or flight, because one of these triggers has popped up, we move into these behaviors. Have you seen this exhibit? When people get a little out of bounds. It's just like that, hurry up, we're going to be late. It's such a horrible thing to say to a kid. How many times did I say it to my kids before I figured this all out? Way too many times. Because I'm an early bird. Because the rest of my family is like a right on time or later bird. Mm-hmm. So I had to struggle with that a lot. So these three kind of go together. This blaming one I put down here separately because it's like finger pointing. You know, you get into a relationship and it's 20 years ahead and maybe one of you didn't finish your degree. Well, you know, it's really her fault I never finished my degree. I've heard such blamey things. Do you hear this? Blamey things with couples. It's his fault that I don't run every day. What is that? Well, because I need to get home and I don't have time. So we don't blame. People blame their children. We move into this when we feel stretched to the max and we don't have control. Burnt out and broken. I've coached a few people in the ADD, ADHD world, and one of the people I was coaching was a nurse. And she said, I feel like my brain is broken. That was only the second time I'd had someone come right on and use that word, broken. The first time was a 19-year-old who, in high school at 14, started smoking pot like on the weekends. And then it became, by age 16, 17, every night. And then by 18, 19, it was all day long. So her life is a mess. She couldn't keep a job. She felt like her brain was broken because she was so anxious. Even we live here in Michigan, she lived in a cold weather state. The cold weather made her anxious. Like going outside into the cold and feeling cold air into her lungs made her anxious. So it was really chronic anxiety that was the deep thing. Her brain isn't broken anymore though. I taught her this, she got it immediately, and she just started changing everything. So even the coldness, she embraced it. She went to Niagara Falls in the winter, like cool things, because she finally was free of that feeling. And then of course overwhelmed and burned out. And as college students, that's super easy, isn't it? You have all these classes. How many of you are working too? Yeah, look at that. So you're working, you're going to school. Anybody have kids already? So you have children already. That's a lot. That's a lot. So it's really easy to feel burned out. And when you figure out what your triggers are and decide that it's really, here's a really big thing that will help you. So we overreact, right? And we release these hormones because most of us are not in fight or flight for being attacked. It's all these other little things. So we overreact, we release the hormones. For men in the room, it takes you up to 9 hours before your cells can dissipate all those hormones out and you're back to normal. So the stress cycle lasts up to 9 hours for you. Well, that's your whole day trying to work, right? Or your whole night trying to sleep. So I'm glad the females are sitting down because for us, yeah, it's up to 24 hours. That's a bitter pill to swallow, but doesn't it explain a lot? Guys, you have an argument with a woman. You've kind of forgotten the argument after a few hours. But has she?
A few minutes. A few minutes we've forgotten.
A few minutes you've forgotten. I had a boy who was 22. I was working with him and he came to a session and goes, my girlfriend broke up with me Saturday morning. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he goes, I think it's going to be okay though because she broke up with me because I couldn't remember what the fight was Friday night. So, this is huge to know. When my boys learned this, they never wanted to see their mom go into fight or flight again. For 2 reasons. First of all, if I went into fight or flight and said, Mom, can I use your car tonight? No, you can't use my car. Isn't there? There's no reason why they can't use my car, but if I'm in fight or flight, I'm protecting all my assets. You can't touch that here. Right? You can't touch my car. I don't want you in my car. So, I'm not a very nice person. I move into this. If I trigger. And they never want to see me that way. Plus, they truly love me. My boys really love me. So if you really, really love someone, you don't want to see them go into this whole thing, do you? You really don't. Our whole family changed in 2010 when we got that. Because none of us ever want to see the other person trigger fight or flight and have to go through a 9-hour deal, or for me, 24 hours. That is way too long to be compromising ourselves. Can we do God's work when we're in this? Not really. We're only half there. Our brain isn't working fully. So that to me is my biggest target, my biggest why. I want to be fully functioning all day, every day, day after day after day. Then at night when I go to sleep, what does my body get to do?
Recover and rest.
Recover and rest. Deep delta wave sleep. Have you guys gone into brain waves?
Not really.
So, I'll do a little, have time to do just a little brainwave thing. So, high theta. Theta brainwaves and high thetas are when you are, when you've triggered fight or flight, you go into high theta, very high frequency brainwaves. When you're trying to sleep at night, you need to go into, I call it deep delta. Deep sleep, delta. If you have triggered high theta waves, you can't get into delta that night. It's not possible. So that's why people are so fatigued in the morning. They didn't really get a real night's sleep. Rest, rejuvenate, refresh yourself so when you wake up. So my boys were teenagers. The youngest was 10 when I created this. Professor Scott has met him. He had some anger issues at 10. He had some situations going on. He did not sleep well. Thought he was terrible in math. He used this method 7 years later. He was the #1 kid at the Elite Math and Science Center. He was valedictorian in his class. He was a National Merit finalist. And he's at Columbia in New York with over a 4.0. Now doing research in his second year. So it's like, where would he be if he hadn't figured this out? He was really angry. And my 18-year-old was getting up earlier and earlier because he was finally getting a real night's sleep. So finally, he gets up now, he runs a business here in town at 4:30 every morning. He's 27, 28, just turned 28, and now he's up at 4:30, starting his day, awake. So deep delta sleep, I'm just going to mention these two, because they're totally linked. You cannot get here if you've triggered fight or flight. So, here's how we stop it. By the grace of God, when you start to feel any of these emotions, or notice a tension in your neck, you start grinding your teeth, or you start doing anything like this, coming here for comfort, you have 10 seconds. If you look at the clock, 10 seconds is a pretty long time. It's way too long for me to wait. So, 10 seconds is plenty of time for you to do something to interrupt and keep those hormones from releasing from your adrenal glands. Does that make sense? So, these stress hormones don't go out. We don't go into fight or flight, do we? That night when we sleep, do we need to sleep well? Sleep really well. If we can go a whole day without triggering. How many times a day do you think we trigger? It was like 20 times for me to just get my kids to school in the morning. I counted them. It was not a good scene. So that's the problem, is once we trigger once, we're vulnerable. So now I'm going to teach you tools. Some very cool tools. At first, I want you to put your hands on your belly and just thoroughly relax the muscles. We don't care. I'm going to go big on camera. I'm going to look pregnant. So just relax your muscles here. Go ahead and tighten them again. And now really relax them. It's hard for some people. How many of you are struggling trying to relax your abs? How many of you were athletes who were told to hold your abs in tight? So do it again. Tighten your abs, and then really relax them. When we go into fight or flight, the first thing we do with our body typically is tighten here. Our ribs protect our heart and lungs, right? But our abs protect all of this. So we instantly tighten our abs to build defense. This is going to be so cool for you as you start to interview or work with clients or work with anyone that you're trying to help. When you can relax your abs, they're going to trust you. Does this make sense? Because if you tighten here, you're putting up a defense. But if you relax here, so let's say you're working with someone on a critical issue and you relax here, Or like your fiance, you're having a really good discussion about something, but if you're tense here, she's going to feel a little put off. And some people are more sensitive to that than others, but everybody picks up on the cues. So when you relax your abs, you tell your brain you're okay. It's very instant neurofeedback. I must not be in fight or flight, or else I will be tight. Does that make sense? So you can do it anywhere, anytime. No one needs to know you're doing it. You're in traffic and you're feeling like you're going to be late to school. Just relax your abs. Because there's no reason for you to mess up your body for this many hours, is it? So that being late to school is no reason to go into a 9-hour or 24-hour deal. So you have to ask yourself, is this worth messing up my mind and body for that many hours? So that's the first tool I want to give you when you're relax your abs. Second tool is what I taught you. How's your posture doing? How are you guys doing? Have you slid back? So the second tool is posture. Have you heard, have a strong posture when you go into an interview? Stand up straight, so that you look confident. When you actually lift your posture up, you tell your brain you're okay. You tell your own brain you're calm, not just everybody else's. So posture is a really cool, easy tool. Again, nobody needs to know you're doing it. How many of you have heard to do this? Right? Take a long, slow breath. So I've known about that for years, but I didn't know about the 10-second deal. You need to start your breath the moment you start to feel one of these. Then you can actually stop the hormones from going out. I don't know why, but ever since I told you about that horrible recital experience, right? So whenever I have to play a recital in a small hall, I am great on the big stage, but the little hall, I have to really watch it. So I was playing a faculty recital, and I could feel my heart rate going. I'm like, okay, this is not good. So I would take a nice, long, slow breath and smile. Take another long, slow breath. However many breaths I needed to keep my heart rate from going too high and releasing the adrenaline. So you guys can do that anytime. No one needs to know that you're starting a long, slow breath. And if your abs are relaxed, which some people really need to work, some of my clients really need to work on really relaxing them, then you can take a really great breath. Next tool, super easy, it's a smile. You don't smile enough in North America. How many of you have traveled to places like Haiti, any place where there's people who have far less than what we have? Do those people smile more? Typically, yes. One of my son's friends came back from Haiti after a really bad thing had happened down there. And when she got off the plane here in Grand Rapids, she wanted to get right back on and go right back because nobody was smiling. And she goes, I just like being there because people smile more. So we don't smile a whole lot in North America. When you smile and the corners of your mouth go up, dopamine flows. Do you guys know about dopamine? So dopamine is not only that feel-good drug, dopamine is the neurotransmitter required for the entire cortex to work. He loves dopamine. He's smiling away over there. If you don't have dopamine flowing in your brain, and it's shut off immediately in fight or flight, then you can't think and remember well. Then you can't make good decisions, and you have no willpower. So if you smile just a little, dopamine keeps flowing. By the way, yawn. I love it when people yawn. They just need more oxygen. So go for it. It was a really long yawn. It's really good. So everybody just smile a little bit. I mean, you don't smile enough. Like, now she's smiling for real. She's laughing. Smiling is really important. And if you don't start smiling, you're going to start to look like a fish. My husband calls that the fish mouth, or resting bitch face.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's horrible, but it's true. You can sit in an entire meeting with someone and they're like this. The whole time, it's just awful. I was giving great news to a group once, and the group the whole time was in this like resting, horrible face. I just was saying, this is really good news. You guys should be smiling about this right now. It was financial news. So smile is easy. It's usually one of the tools my clients play with first, because a lot of the things we trigger over are pretty silly and not necessary for us to trigger over. It's kind of a game. This one is slogan. So when I was thinking about this, I thought of Nike's Just Do It. Marketing slogan, right? So what are little words you can put in your head so you don't trigger fight or flight? One of mine is stay up, like get up and over the situation so I can solve it instead of messing myself up in it. Another one is let it go, and I don't know, for some reason I always do my hands like this too. Like, why am I fighting about the vacuuming? What is the point? It's certainly not worth the 9-hour, 24-hour deal, right? So why am I doing that? And then another one, this is actually one of my clients, she says, I can do this. So when you feel yourself going into a test or going into something really hard, it's like, I've got this. I can do this. I was working with a boy who's taking an AP Physics, the final, not like the AP test, but the final, and he needed a C to pass. So I had worked with him in the fall. This was the spring, but he texted me, because I tell my clients they can text me anytime. He texts me, goes, I need a C on this, I feel like I'm going to fail. So I just went, I said, can you talk? He goes, no. So I just texted him, do this, do this, do this. I told him 3 steps. I told him to relax his abs, smile, and ask his brain, how can I get an A on this? So that's what I told him to do. He went into the test. He prevented the release of hormones. I knew he'd studied. He got an A-. So he needed a C. He thought he was going to get an F. And he got an A-. You're all brilliant. Between your 2 years is brilliant. It's pure brilliance. You can do so much more than you ever did you could. But you've been shut down by stress hormones for a long time. Since you were born. Since before you were born. So, and you were hazy. You get hazy when we do these things. So slogan's really simple, and then this next one. Is flip the switch. So it's a motion. You're all adults now, so your brain is pretty formed. The only way for you to retrain your brain is what you say first thing when you wake up and right before you go to sleep. So if you say your prayers in that time, that's beautiful. And a gross motor motion. So this is like a switch on your head, and if we turned up the lights, it would get pretty dark in here. That's what happens when you go in fight or flight. So I want you to flip the switch on with your hand. That's right. You can just flip the switch. Try it. Just like move your hand. It's no big deal. You're just moving your hand. Some people are like throwing it behind them. But you're moving your hand. When you move your hand, your brain goes, we're doing something different. You're not going to go into your old pattern. So, when you flip the switch, I smile first. I say a slogan, and then ask an empowering question, just like I did with that kid taking the test. How can I have a beautiful relationship? How can I get an A here? How can I have a great trip with no travel anxiety? How can I really give my best in this moment? How can I sincerely pray? You can ask so many different empowering questions. This is actually my favorite tool because it's changed my life. I used to ask a lot of disempowering questions, like, why am I so stupid? Why can't I do this? Why can't I get my hair done? Like stupid questions. But my brain is going to rattle around on those questions. So when you ask it an empowering question, it's going to search and search for answers. Does that resonate with people? Like, yeah, if you start asking the right questions, yours is so beautiful. If you ask the question, how can I find the friends I need to support what I want to do in this world? There's plenty of great people that want to support you and want you to have a great life. It's like ask empowering questions. It's very cool. The next one really fits in well here with this college, and call it the spirit of contribution. When you feel yourself comparing yourself to someone else, or you feel yourself competing with someone else, instead of trying to be the best, ask yourself how you can be your own best, with your own unique gifts and talents flowing out freely with no fear of loss. I used to coach middle school track for many years, so kids would say to me, Well, first of all, like if you win, it's great, right? But if you lose, it's not so good. So my students who would fear like they might mess up, they're already not going to perform well, not as well as they could. Here's the other thing they do: they go, "Oh, Mrs. Ingalls, I could have run faster." Like, wow, why don't we just do it, right? We hold back a little bit because if you were to give your best and still fail, that's just too crushing for a human soul. We need to have a little cushion, so if we don't do it, we have an excuse for why. That's kind of deep. Does it make sense to you? Like, you hold back just a little. You'll do it in your relationships. You'll do it with your fiance. Like, you'll hold back just a little bit just in case it doesn't work out, right? You have the reason why. We're always trying to rationalize and have reasons over here. So, contribution. When you go home tonight, how many of you live with someone? Do you live so somebody else in your house, like it can be a friend or whatever? When you go home, when you cross the threshold, ask the question, how can I contribute? I used to walk home, and my husband was the stay-at-home dad for our older two, and the place was just sports mania. Like the living room was a full-court basketball court, 2 hoops, the whole deal. So I'd walk in, and the house was just crazy, paint everywhere and stuff going on, and I would start complaining. Is that contributing? Not at all. Not at all. So I started to zip my lips. That started to help. So ask yourself how you can contribute in lots of different situations, with friendships, with everything. Last tool in my set of, these are my beginner 9, have to do with goal setting. We did a little here. So at a coach in California I was working with, and he had me writing my goals every single day. I was like, wow, every day? He goes, yeah, you have 5 minutes. That's all it takes. It takes like 2 minutes. So see if you can start, if you have a planner, I don't care where you do it, a sticky note, a scrap piece of paper, a notebook. Start writing down some of your goals, dreams, and visions for yourself. And don't kick yourself if you don't do it every day, but start to do it. And see what starts to happen. You're going to get really resourceful. Your goals are going to start to shift and even get bigger. Because you're finally focusing on where you want to go. Most of us don't. So that's just a really simple, I have a simple 3-step thing. You write the goal, and then you write down 2 things to make those goals go forward. And then the third thing is kind of weird, but let's say you have class. So in your planner it says class. You write next to it, amazing, or fabulous, or fantastic. Some verb, or some adjective. Some people write verbs. I like adjectives. That describe how you want to show up in the class. How you want to show up in your life. Otherwise, you let everybody else decide how you feel. Your teachers, your coaches, your family members, your friends. But when you start to say, I'm going to have a great time here today. I'm going to have a fabulous lunch with my friend. I'm going to have a great game with my buddy. Whatever those things are. I had a businessman who owned a large business say that when he started doing this, he had dinner with his wife for the first time in 20 years. Now he has dinner with her every night. But is he present? He's worried about his business. Can't wait to get back to his computer. So he was never really with her until he started doing this work with me and decided it was important for him to be with his wife. So goals are kind of fun and just kind of top of mind. I want to go to Paris. I want to have a wife and kids. I want to have a beautiful spouse. Whatever it is you want to write. Start having some fun with it. So this is a pressure-free method. 3 simple tips, targets, triggers, tools, and we kind of came full circle and came back to the goals as the last tool. So these tools, I want you to take a look and pick a couple of them to start playing with. And then the starter tool that I share with all of my clients and all the groups I do, I call it the Celebration Ferris Wheel. It comes from a business book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. Great guy. He said you need to celebrate incremental gains to make change happen. So I want you to celebrate every time you start to see a trigger happening, which might not be a very nice thing, right? But we're going to celebrate it, so I want you to be able to start to change it. So I imagine a Ferris wheel right in front of my face, or if you don't like Ferris wheels. You can shoot a 3-point shot like a basketball, but it's spinning. Okay, and you push it, so that's a gross motor motion. Just like flip the switch is a gross motor motion. So everybody just push your hands in the air like that. It's a silly thing to do. Put your hands up. The reason I have you do that again is to retrain here. It's silly, so hopefully you'll smile. Some of you did. Some of you need to work on your smiling. I think we need to. Oh, how many have heard of smile therapy? This is a psych class. Have you heard of smile therapy? 1977, University of California, Berkeley, did a study therapy experiment. All of the people in the experiment were clinically depressed and on medications. They had to smile for a certain amount of time every day, and at the end of this experiment, they were all off their medications. You don't hear about smile therapy. Do you know why? It's free. Pharma doesn't make anything off the smiling.
Yeah, that's no good.
It's no
We need
good.
to make money.
We can't make money. So smiling is free. You can help people so much with smiling. So play with these ideas. Grab a couple of these tools. This Ferris wheel one is very silly. It will get you smiling if you're not smiling yet. Plus, it lifts your posture up and over your pelvis so you can solve it. So it's got a 3-pronged attack there to get you started. And I mean, I worked with entire, banks and labs, science labs, where people go like this, because it's, these things are going to come up. These thoughts are going to come in your head. These problems are all around us, and they have never been. We were talking at lunch. Never have we ever seen such a reaction as we are seeing right now, ever in our world. And before, when we were growing up, no one ever mentioned the word election anxiety. It didn't exist. Now we have health anxiety, election anxiety. So we're here to help you. We're here to make this a better world.
I have anxiety about my anxiety.
Exactly. And a 6th grader, I was recently working with some little ones, a 6th grader said to me, Mrs. Ingalls, it's popular to be anxious. Girls are pretending they're anxious online to get attention. That's kind of interesting. So you guys are going to be parents in a really interesting age too. One of you already is. It's a very interesting time. These tools can help you. You can teach this to a kindergartner to relax their abs and smile a little. It's so cool when they start to feel better and their stomachs don't hurt anymore. Some students that I have, their stomach always hurts. Some adults I have, their stomachs are always in pain. It's really amazing. Yes?
I work in a daycare, and I primarily work with 4-year-olds. I've got this one little friend who said when you tell him to do something, that he doesn't want to do, how do you respond to that? I can't do that.
Wow.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to do that. Wow. Well, we could spend like a half an hour talking about that one. The first thing to do is again, get them to relax here. Little ones hold so much tension here, and they don't feel that they can do anything if their body is tense. So if they can relax here, and you can make a game out of whatever it is.
Yeah, like,
And it's a boy, make it really fun.
even, I feel like with him, even, like just telling him, relax, I can't do that, because I've told him,
Oh yeah. Relax doesn't work.
relax, that's okay.
Right, that doesn't, has anybody ever told you to relax before? It makes you angry? Just don't tell me that. Because you can't. But if you say, put your hand here and let it be like a balloon out into your hand. Like use imagery to get them to do this, so you don't have to use the word relax. Say, let's put your hands here and go.
I don't use that specific word, I just tell him,
Yeah. So interesting.
breathe,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
take some deep breaths.
Any other quick questions? Another series of questions. Was this helpful? Did you guys learn something that you didn't know before?
All of it.
All of it?
Almost all of it.
That's good. What slogan is popping out to you that's going to be helpful? Or what tool? What tool do you think you might use?
Posture and empowering questions.
Posture and problem questions. Nice. Anybody else? What 2 tools are you going to use?
Posture and probably
Smiling? It's a good thing. My husband's super happy that I'm so happy. How about you? Slogan. Empowering questions. An empowering question. Cassie, what do you like?
Posture and smile.
Posture and smile.
I studied neurocore. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but
Oh, nice. You did very well.
I did a lot of, so it's always been abs and breathing.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've had clients go to neurocore. How about you? Breathing and smiling. Yeah. How about you?
Probably abs relaxed, breathing, and I'm probably like slogan too.
Slogan?
Through.
Nice. Good, yeah. Put as many in your tool belt as you need. I like a big construction worker tool belt with all my tools handy right here. How about you?
Maybe breathing and smiling.
Breathing and smiling. Yeah. Those are good. How about you? You like them all? Yes, sure it is.
Yeah, empowering questions and posture is going to be big for me. I do breathe a lot, and that helps. I went through something really tough last night. I was sitting at my desk, and I was like fight or flight. I was like, what am I going to do? And I got up and started walking and breathing, and in 5 minutes I was fine. I was completely relaxed. So I think now knowing this is going to help.
Catch it sooner.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
yeah.
Beautiful. How about you?
So, abs, I guess, posture and smiling.
And keep sitting on your hamstring. That'll make you super strong. Well, it was such a pleasure to share this all with you. I hope you got something out of it that's going to help you, especially in this time we're in. Who knows, we'll come back to class. And,
April 6th.
April
Maybe.
6th. Maybe, right?
As long as no one gets it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Come on.
So first we